Far out in the Pacific Ocean, beyond every human map, Elias Veyron's exploration team is on a mission. The first tremor was so subtle that most of the world ignored it. A faint vibration rolled through the Pacific, rattling the coffee cups, of sailors aboard cargo freighters and sending flocks of seabirds wheeling into the gray sky. It was 5:42 a.m. in Honolulu when the ocean began to heave. At first, it looked like an undersea quake, just another restless shift of the planet. Then the horizon broke. From the bridge of the U.S. survey vessel, Seeker 1, First Officer Rylan, Holt gripped the railing. "Captain, tell me I'm seeing things." The Pacific was rising. A jagged ridge pierced the surface, water streaming off its black stone like liquid glass. Then another and another, until the sea foamed with white. Fury! The ship rocked violently as an island that had never existed tore its way into daylight. Son of a... The captain's words were swallowed by the roar of the ocean. Sirens blared as waves surged in every direction, hammering the vessel. Cameras mounted on the deck captured the impossible event, live streaming it to GeoSec's orbital network. In minutes, the world would see. From the control room in Geneva, Dr. Elias Veyron leaned forward, his reflection trembling in the glass of the main screen. He had spent decades studying tectonic anomalies and theoretical geophysics, but nothing prepared him for this. "What is that?" whispered Serena Corrin, his second in command, her usually steady voice frayed. The feed zoomed in on the rising landmass. Spires of obsidian jutted like the teeth of a colossal beast. Cascades of seawater fell in slow motion as if time itself hesitated, reluctant to witness what came next. Within minutes, the ridge expanded into plateaus, valleys, and cliffs, forming a continent the size of Greenland. A hurricane of mist and foam encircled its edges. "Impossible," Elias murmured, his pulse hammering. "Land doesn't just rise like that. Not here. Not now." News alerts detonated across the globe. "Spontaneous continental emergence!" screamed headlines in Tokyo, Berlin, New York. Satellite imagery showed the newborn landmass sprawled across the central Pacific, reshaping shipping routes and swallowing centuries-old currents. Scientists debated in a frenzy. Governments barked orders, and social media drowned in disbelief. By nightfall, footage from orbit revealed a perfectly symmetrical outline to the continent, unnaturally precise. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered a warning. Half a world away, on a storm-lashed beach in Micronesia, a fisherman named Kaleo stood ankle-deep in retreating foam, his net forgotten. He had seen islands before. This was no island. From the black cliffs, a low hum rolled across the water, a resonance that seemed to burrow into his bones. He shivered. For a heartbeat, he swore the land itself was watching. He ran. In the emergency briefing at GeoSec, the room smelled of sweat and ozone from overheated processors. Streams of live data flashed across the walls. Every seismic sensor within 1,000 miles screamed its confusion. "It's not just rising," Serena said, pointing at the telemetry. "It's stabilizing, like it was always there, waiting." Elias couldn't look away from the holographic model of the continent. Its peaks resembled spires, its valleys geometric. Basins. No random tectonic chaos could shape something so deliberate. A single name appeared on his lips, unbidden, like he had always known it. "Auralis," he whispered. Serena glanced at him. "What did you say?" "Auralis," Elias repeated, his voice steadier now. "It feels right." Around the world, the oceans continued to churn, as if resisting this intruder. Tidal waves lashed remote coasts. Shipping traffic froze. Military fleets mobilized. Yet the continent rose higher, glistening under the setting sun like a colossal jewel freshly unearthed. And then, as suddenly as it began, the motion stopped. The sea stilled, as if holding its breath. Auralis stood silent, wrapped in a shroud of mist. In the command center, Elias realized his hands were trembling. He forced them to still. He had seen strange things in his career, but this was history breaking itself in half. Somewhere, deep within that newborn land, something had awakened. Hours after Auralis breached the surface, the skies above. The Pacific were crowded with orbital eyes. GeoSec's command room in Geneva thrummed with tension, lit by a dozen holographic displays. Satellites swept over the newborn continent, capturing every angle in merciless clarity. "Feed coming in from Sentinel-9, Serena Corrin said, her voice clipped. Her fingers danced over the console, pulling up the thermal overlay. The room fell silent. The screen filled with deep blues and blacks, the cold signature of exposed rock, yet here and there, tiny flickers of heat pulsed in precise rhythmic patterns. "Those aren't volcanic vents," Elias Veyron muttered. "They're too regular." The thermal images zoomed in on a network of lines running across the continent's surface, intersecting like circuitry. To an untrained eye, it could have been coincidence. To Elias, it was design. Another console chimed. "We're picking up audio?" Malik Rowe, the team's comms specialist, leaned closer to the waveform dancing on his screen. A faint hum rose in the room, layered and alien like the sound of wind moving through hollow metal. "It's modulating," Malik said, his brows knitting. "Repeating every 90 seconds. If I didn't know better, I'd call it a handshake. Signal." A murmur rippled through the command center. None of them said the word, but it hung in the air. Contact. Serena glanced at Elias. If this is artificial, then someone built Auralis, or something. The feed shifted again as Sentinel-9 passed overhead, revealing a cluster of spire-like formations surrounded by the curling ocean mist. One spire emitted a brief pulse of light, so quick that only the satellite caught it. The coordinates blinked onto the map. "Mark it," Elias said, his voice low but steady. "That's our first landing site." Then, as quickly as the light appeared, the hum in the room died. The audio feed flatlined. "Signal's gone," Malik said, looking around as if the air itself had stolen it. On the main display, clouds thickened around Auralis, curling like living smoke. The satellite's optical feed struggled against the haze, and for a moment, it seemed the continent had swallowed itself into secrecy again. Elias exhaled slowly. Whatever waited on Auralis had just noticed they were watching. The world did not sleep that night. Across every major capital, emergency meetings convened under the shroud of secrecy. The sudden rise of Auralis had thrown the planet into a frenzy of fear and wonder. And now the debate over what to do next had reached a boiling point. In the United Nations Security Complex in New York, a panel of world leaders and scientists filled the grand oval chamber. The monitors along the walls displayed live satellite imagery, occasionally disrupted by static as the mist thickened over the continent. "This is a global security threat," declared Admiral Tenzin Chow of the Pacific Defense Coalition. His sharp voice carried over the hum of translators. "A landmass of this size appearing overnight destabilizes naval routes and could be a staging ground for, well, we don't know what." Dr. Elias Veyron stood at the center podium, exhausted but focused. He had been summoned from Geneva only hours earlier. His palms rested on the polished steel edge as he addressed the room. "With respect, Admiral, this isn't just a military problem. We've detected structured heat signatures and a repeating signal from the surface. That means intelligence, or at the very least, advanced automated systems. If we approach Auralis with fear alone, we risk provoking something we don't understand." Murmur rippled through the chamber. Several diplomats exchanged nervous glances. "Are you saying it's alien?" asked Senator Valeria Monroe, her brow furrowed. "I'm saying it's not natural," Elias replied. "And if it is alien, then it's the first verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology on our planet. Humanity can't afford to react blindly. Across the table, Serena Corrin scrolled through her tablet, projecting a schematic of the thermal patterns onto the chamber wall. We believe the central spire cluster could be an entrance, a source of power, or something watching us, but it's clear the structure isn't random. The room fell into tense silence before the Secretary General leaned forward. Then we need answers. Fast. I propose an international expedition under geosec supervision. Scientific, but with defense support. Admiral Chow hesitated, then finally nodded. We'll provide the escort. But if that continent becomes hostile, I want full authority to respond. The vote passed with a mixture of reluctance and anticipation. Auralis had become the world's greatest mystery, and now humanity was preparing to set foot on it. Elias glanced at Serena as the meeting adjourned. Beneath the exhaustion in her eyes, he saw the same flicker of awe and fear that ran through his own veins. They were going to Auralis, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hangar at Geosec's Pacific launch facility roared with activity. Floodlights bathed the cavernous space, glinting off the sleek hulls of reconnaissance aircraft and transport drones. Technicians in orange vests scurried along catwalks, checking fuel lines and magnetic clamps, while a low hum of machinery underscored the electric tension in the air. Elias Veyron stood on the deck of the lead vessel, the Orpheon, his hands gripping the cold railing. Below him, the team that would define humanity's first encounter with Auralis gathered for final checks. Malik Rowe, the communications specialist, was tightening the straps of his headset. I've got 3 backup relays and a drone swarm prepped. If Auralis wants to play hide-and-seek again, we'll be ready, he said with a grin that didn't quite hide his nerves. Dr. Kira Selin, the exobiologist, knelt by a sealed crate, running her gloved hand over the equipment inside. Portable bioscanners, sample containment units, and emergency sterilization kits. If there's life out there, even microbial, we need to be prepared. I don't want to bring back something Earth can't handle. Serena Corrin emerged from the command module in her dark geosec flight suit, a digital tablet tucked under her arm. We've been cleared for takeoff in 20 minutes. Once we breach the cloud layer around Auralis, we're on our own. The team shared a brief silence, the weight of the mission pressing in. Beyond the walls of the hangar, the Pacific roared against the launch platform, and somewhere on that horizon waited the continent that had rewritten every assumption they had about the world. All right, Elias said finally, his voice steady. We've all read the briefings. We've all seen the signals. This is history, people, and history doesn't wait for anyone. As the Orpheon taxied to the lift platform, the sun was just beginning to bleed into the ocean, turning the waves gold. The team strapped in, the engines rising to a thunderous crescendo. Slowly, the craft rose into the night, carrying them toward the wall of mist that shrouded Auralis, toward the unknown. The Orpheon sliced through the night sky, leaving a silver trail over the restless Pacific. Inside, the cabin lights dimmed as the crew focused on the horizon ahead. Auralis loomed like a phantom, wrapped in a swirling wall of mist that reached from the ocean's surface to the clouds above. Lightning flickered silently within the haze, illuminating its rolling folds for a heartbeat before swallowing itself in darkness. Entering visual range, Serena Corrin announced, her voice tight. Altitude steady at 3,000. Malik Rowe adjusted the comms panel, his hands a little too quick. Signals holding. Still clean. The cockpit grew quieter as the mist swelled in the viewport like a living barrier. Elias Veyron leaned forward in his harness, eyes locked on the phenomenon that had haunted his every thought since the first satellite image. Engage scanners, he said. The console bloomed with data streams, thermal readings, radar sweeps, audio frequencies, At first, everything looked normal, until the radar display fractured into static. Radar just died, Malik muttered. A low, almost imperceptible hum began to tremble through the hull. The team exchanged wary looks. Outside, the mist seemed to pulse, as if reacting to the Orpheon's presence. Then they crossed the threshold. In an instant, the world disappeared. The fog wrapped around the aircraft like wet velvet, muting the roar of the engines. Instruments flickered. Serena tapped the console. "I've lost visual feed. External cameras aren't responding." Malik's voice cracked. "All comms are... Wait. No. Gone. It's all gone." Elias glanced at the window, but there was nothing to see. Only the blind white of the shroud. He felt the weight of the unknown pressing in, cold and heavy in his chest. Then, without warning, the cabin lights flickered, dimmed, and the primary communications panel went dead. Every screen in the cockpit fell to black. "Orpheon to geosec control," Serena called into the dead mic, her voice almost a whisper now. "We've entered the mist. Signal lost." And the world fell silent. The ramp of the Orpheon groaned, open, spilling a thin stream of light onto the uneven shore of Auralis. The air that rolled inside was heavy, damp, and metallic, like a breath exhaled from some sleeping giant. Elias Veyron gripped the straps of his pack and stepped down first, boots sinking slightly into a dark, clay-like sand. The ocean behind him whispered in restless waves, but the land before him was silent. No birds, no wind, no life. He scanned the horizon. Beyond the mist that had nearly swallowed their plane, Auralis stretched in jagged ridges and broken plateaus, as if the earth had torn itself open and decided to rise from the sea. The ground steamed in places, sending thin tendrils of vapor curling skyward. The crew descended one by one, their footsteps the only sound. "Jesus," Malik Rowe muttered, turning in a slow circle. "It's like we landed on a grave." Or, "A memory," Serena Corrin said softly, lifting her scanner. "I'm getting faint mineral readings, nothing biological, no signs of movement. It's just empty." Elias knelt and pressed a hand to the soil. It was warm, almost pulsing, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. He drew back, feeling an inexplicable tremor of unease crawl up his spine. "Stay sharp. We don't know what's waiting under this quiet." They advanced inland, following a narrow ridge that overlooked the shore. The fog thinned in streaks, revealing hints of the interior, shattered rock formations, spires of stone that twisted upward like frozen lightning, and deep crevasses that seemed to vanish into infinity. Every step echoed, the sound bouncing back, in strange, delayed fragments, as if the land itself was listening. A sudden metallic chime rang out from Serena's handheld device. "Hold up, I'm picking up something. Not natural. Right ahead. Maybe half a click." Elias motioned for the team to tighten their formation. "Let's see it." They crested a small rise, and the world changed. Spread before them was a wide plain, smooth as glass, interrupted only by the skeletal remains of structures that jutted from the earth. Buildings, or what might have been buildings, rose in fractured towers, their surfaces a dark, reflective alloy that caught the dim light and fractured it into rippling patterns. The landscape felt frozen mid-breath, as if time had stopped the moment Auralis had risen from the ocean. Malik broke the silence, his voice almost reverent. "Where are the animals? The insects? Hell, even moss or lichen? This place is dead." Serena shook her head. "Not dead. Sleeping. The readings are inconsistent, like the ground itself is alive, but dormant." Elias glanced back at the Orpheon, now a small silhouette against the ocean mist. For the first time, he felt the full weight of isolation pressing down. If anything went wrong here, there would be no rescue. He turned his gaze back to the impossible landscape. Somewhere in the distance, a low hum vibrated through the air, so faint he wondered if it was his imagination. He took another step, and the sound deepened, resonating through the soles of his boots like the pulse of a giant heart buried beneath the soil. "All right," he said, voice firm despite the tightness in his chest. "We move forward. Document. Everything. No one goes off alone." The team nodded, but their eyes betrayed the same thought, unspoken yet undeniable. This place was watching them. The deeper the team ventured inland, the more the world seemed to warp around them. Auralis rose in slow, uneven tiers, and on the second plateau, they finally saw what the satellite images had failed to capture. A city sprawled across the land like a skeleton of some forgotten civilization. Elias froze at the ridge's edge. "There it is," he whispered. The city was massive. Streets, if they could be called that, radiated outward in perfect concentric circles, paved in a dark, reflective material that glimmered like wet obsidian. Towering structures pierced the sky, their surfaces smoothed by an unidentifiable alloy that shimmered with faint iridescence. No flags, no lights, no motion. It was as if an entire metropolis had been carved for an audience that never arrived. "Not a single life form," Serena muttered, scrolling through her scanner. No heat signatures, no EM signals. Even the air compositions, static. Like this place is sealed off from time itself. Malik crouched, running a gloved hand along the black surface of the street. Feels like metal, but colder. It's almost resonant. He knocked on it lightly, and the sound traveled down the road in a slow ripple, vanishing into the maze of structures. The team moved cautiously, their boots echoing with each step. Windows, if that's what they were, gaped, open in the monolithic buildings, revealing cavernous interiors that swallowed light. Some structures leaned at odd angles, as if something immense had shifted beneath them. Yet no rubble or debris littered the streets. Elias stopped at a towering archway, its surface etched with geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed, from different angles. His pulse quickened. This isn't human architecture. These proportions, this design language, whoever built this, they didn't think the way we do. Or they weren't. "Human," Serena said, voice barely. Above a whisper, a hollow wind suddenly threaded through the city, carrying with it a faint, distant hum. The team instinctively huddled closer, scanning the streets, but the city remained motionless, its silence heavier than any noise. From somewhere deep in the labyrinth, a soft metallic chime echoed. A single note, clear and alien. It faded quickly as it came, leaving only the oppressive quiet. Malik swallowed hard. "I feel like we're trespassing." Elias glanced back toward the ocean, now hidden beyond ridges and mist. Retreat wasn't an option. They had come here to uncover what Auralis held, and the city's silence felt like a challenge. He adjusted the strap on his rifle and took a deliberate step into the shadow of the nearest tower. "Let's see how deep this ghost city goes." The wind carried a strange metallic tang as the team navigated deeper into the heart of the city. Towering spires loomed like the fingers of a sleeping giant, their sharp silhouettes clawing at the pale sky. The streets grew narrower, twisting, into alleys that made no logical sense, curling around themselves like a maze designed to confuse any intruder. "Keep your comms open and eyes sharp," Elias ordered, his voice firm but low. The oppressive silence seemed to punish loud noises. "This place feels wrong." Malik lagged a few steps behind, his head swiveling as he scanned every surface with his handheld sensor. The readings were useless. The device flickered with static like it couldn't decide what was real. Serena walked beside him, one hand resting on the grip of her sidearm, her knuckles white beneath the glove. Then they reached it. A building unlike the others. It crouched in the middle of an open, square, its walls curved and organic, almost like the rib cage of a colossal animal fossilized in metal. A narrow slit of an entrance pulsed faintly with inner light, an amber glow that seemed to throb like a heartbeat. "Do you see that?" Malik breathed, his voice shaking with equal parts awe and unease. Elias lifted a hand. "Nobody goes in alone. We move as a sudden chime reverberated through the square, sharp and crystalline. It froze them in place. The amber light in the entrance flickered rapidly, and for an instant Elias thought he saw shapes moving within the darkness. "Elias," Malik said, stepping toward the doorway despite the warning, This is a sensor or beacon of some kind. If I can just—" "Malik, wait!" Serena snapped, reaching for his arm. But he had already crossed the threshold. The world seemed to swallow him whole. 1 second he was there, his silhouette backlit by the faint glow of the alien corridor. The next, the light flared. A ripple of distortion passed through the air, and Malik was gone. "Malik!" Serena's voice cracked as it bounced off the empty square. Elias sprinted forward, skidding to a halt at the doorway, his flashlight beam cut into the gloom, revealing nothing, just a corridor stretching into impossible darkness, its walls glistening with a metallic sheen. "No Malik! No footprints! Malik, report!" he barked into the comms. Static answered, a hollow hiss that scraped against his nerves. Serena's breathing quickened, ragged. He was right there. He didn't even scream. Elias stepped back, scanning the walls and floor for any sign of him. His military instinct screamed trap. The edges of the building seemed to shimmer, like heat haze rising from asphalt, warping the very air around it. "We need to mark this location and regroup," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "Whatever this is, it's not passive." Then, from deep within the building, a single metallic note rang out. Long, slow, almost mournful. The entire structure responded with a low vibration that traveled up their legs and into their chests. The sound was both a warning and a dare. Serena clutched her rifle tighter. "Elias, I don't think we're alone." He glanced toward the maze of streets behind them, suddenly aware of every shadow, every glint of reflective surface. Somewhere, beyond the mist, something was listening. Watching. "Fall back to the square perimeter," Elias said, his voice taut. "We hold here and—" A second chime cut through the air. This one was closer. They both spun toward the city beyond the square. For a fraction of a second, Elias swore he saw movement, something tall and gliding vanish behind a black spire, and just like that, the silence of Auralis pressed in again, heavier than ever, leaving Malik's disappearance hanging in the air, like a curse. The city felt alive, even though no heartbeats echoed within its walls. Elias, Serena, and the remaining members of the team moved cautiously, skirting the square where Malik had vanished. Every step felt heavier, as if Auralis itself resisted their presence. "Scan everything," Elias ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "If we find anything that explains this tech, we might find him." Dr. Kira Lang, the team's xenotechnology specialist, knelt beside a wall etched with intricate patterns. They weren't just carvings, they pulsed faintly with an inner luminescence, soft like moonlight filtered through fog. She ran her gloved fingers across the grooves and her hand held. "Scanner lit up with erratic symbols. This isn't ornamental," she murmured. "It's a circuit, a living circuit. The wall is reading as semi-organic metal." "Meaning?" Elias prompted, his eyes sweeping the silent square. "Meaning," she said, swallowing hard, "the entire city is technology. It's a machine. Or a being." A thin wind howled through the hollow streets, as if to agree. Serena shivered. "So, we're standing inside a computer that eats people?" Kira didn't answer. Instead, she followed the glowing lines as they curved toward a cluster of structures ahead. 5 slender towers arranged in a perfect circle. They leaned slightly inward, like fingers protecting a secret. At the base of one tower, a crystalline lattice protruded from the ground, rising waist-high. It hummed faintly as they approached. Elias gestured to Kira. "Talk to me. What am I looking at?" She crouched to examine it, scanning each jagged shard. "The lattice is storing energy, but not in any form we understand. It's like a spatial buffer. And look, these grooves here." She traced them with a fingertip, and the crystal responded, emitting a ripple of pale blue light across the plaza. Everyone froze. The light flowed like liquid over the surfaces of the surrounding towers, illuminating. Thousands of hidden glyphs and geometric patterns. The alien city suddenly glowed with eerie beauty, transforming from a graveyard of spires into a cathedral of light. But it was not just beautiful, it was watching. "Those are sensors," Kira whispered, awe and fear mixing in her tone. "They're scanning us, recording us." On cue, the lights rippled again and their comms crackled with bursts of static, then strange tones, like a language trying to form syllables from electricity. Serena instinctively raised her rifle. "I don't like this. If it's alive, it knows we're here." Elias's jaw tightened. He could feel it too, the attention, the awareness pressing down from all directions. Eyes open, no sudden moves. From the corner of his vision, one of the towers flickered, its surface briefly transparent, revealing a latticework of shifting shapes and a single glowing core, like a pupil contracting. And for the first time, Elias was certain. Auralis was studying them. The glow from the towers intensified, bathing the square in shifting hues of blue and violet. Elias felt the hair on his arms rise, as if static electricity threaded the air. A soft hum vibrated through the ground, traveling up his boots into his bones. Then Serena gasped. "Elias, look up!" High above, suspended between the leaning spires, enormous, translucent orbs slowly emerged from the mist. At first, they seemed like floating pools of water, but as the light rippled across them, circular irises formed, organic yet luminous. The size of small aircraft, eyes, hundreds of them. They blinked in unison, their movements synchronized like a heartbeat. Every orb reflected the team's small figures in miniature, each motion magnified and refracted a dozen times over. It was as if Auralis had grown a face, and that face was studying them with predatory curiosity. "God," whispered Dr. Kira Lang, clutching her scanner. "These aren't cameras. They're living sensory nodes. Bioluminescent organs. The city. It's seeing us." The orbs shifted slightly, following even the smallest gestures, the sway of a rifle, the twitch of a hand. Serena took an instinctive step back, but the eyes tilted toward her as one, like a predator tracking prey. "Everyone stay calm," Elias said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "No sudden moves. It wants to understand us, I think." A deep thrumming sound resonated through the city, vibrating the mist. The ground pulsed, in time with it, and several glyphs along the tower walls flared to life, forming geometric patterns that spun like intricate mandalas. The orbs above mirrored the movement, their irises contracting and expanding rhythmically, like some colossal organism deciding what to do with its new guests. Then, without warning, the static in their comms returned, this time forming into a strange layered chorus. It wasn't language they could understand, but the cadence carried intent. "It wasn't random. It's communicating," Kira said, her voice trembling. "Or it's judging." A flash of light swept across the square, passing over each team member in sequence. For a moment, Elias felt as if his very thoughts were being skimmed, like pages of an open book. The hum deepened, and the eyes constricted sharply. Serena's whisper carried the weight of their shared fear. "I think it just decided we're here." Above them, every single eye pivoted, locking onto the team in perfect synchrony, and then the lights went out. The sun on Auralis was thin and pale, filtered through the ever-present veil of mist that clung to the new continent. Elias Veyron led the way across the cracked stone causeway, boots crunching over shards of something that glittered faintly in the dim light. At first glance, it looked like ordinary rubble. Then he crouched and brushed away a layer of dust. His gloved fingers revealed a jagged edge of metal fused with bone. "Everyone stop," he said, his voice low but firm over the comms. The team froze. Mira Solon, their geologist, knelt beside him. "Is that human?" Elias shook his head. The bones were elongated, the ribcage too wide, the skull narrow and sharp like it had been stretched. A faint metallic sheen ran along the spine as if the creature's skeleton had been alloyed with something other than calcium. Dr. Aidan Ross, the team's xenobiologist, whispered, "That's not from Earth." The mist swirled as the wind picked up, and the landscape revealed itself piece by piece. It was not a field. It was a graveyard. Across the gray plain, skeletal. Remains jutted from the ground, many half-buried, tangled with fragments of strange machinery. Some were the size of humans, others massive and grotesque, as if the land itself had tried to swallow their bodies and failed. Shattered weapons lay in between, blades with jagged edges, staffs that pulsed faintly even after what had to be centuries, and blackened plates of armor fused with flesh. The sound of Mira's breath caught in her mic. Oh my God, this was a battlefield. Ahead, the mist thinned further, unveiling the silhouette of something far larger than a man, an alien ship, half sunken in the earth. Its hull was split open, its interior exposed like the ribs of a rotting carcass. The metallic walls were scorched and melted in places, leaving holes that revealed a honeycomb of empty chambers. The ship had no windows, no doors like human vessels. It looked more like the husk of an enormous insect, abandoned and dead. Elias approached slowly, scanning the area with his visor. HUD readouts flickered with static. "Geosec wasn't prepared for this," he muttered. "No one on Earth was." As they reached the shadow of the ship, Aidan ran his fingers over one of the hull's ridges. Organic traces in the metal. "This isn't just tech. It's alive, or it was." He swallowed hard. Whatever these things were fighting, it was enough to kill them. And their ships. They followed a trail of destruction deeper into the scarred landscape. Craters filled with gray dust pockmarked the ground. Some were ringed by spires of melted metal, frozen mid-splash, like someone had captured an explosion in stone. Elias felt the weight of silence pressing in. The wind was the only sound, but in his mind, he could almost hear echoes, shouts in a language he didn't understand, the shriek of weapons that didn't exist anymore, the final moments of something, far older than humankind. Then Lieutenant Caro's voice cracked over the comm. "Commander, I'm picking up faint energy signatures ahead, weak but consistent." They reached the lip of a massive crater. In its center, a twisted alien mech lay sprawled like a fallen titan, its limbs broken, its core shattered. Around, it were countless bones, some bleached white, some still dark with age. A single cracked visor stared up from the dirt, transparent but scarred, and behind it, a skull with hollow eyes, half fused to metal. Elias felt his chest tighten. "This wasn't just a battle. This was annihilation." Aidan's voice dropped to a whisper. "And whatever did this might not be gone." The mist thickened again, curling over the bones like it was trying to hide the truth. The team stood in heavy silence, surrounded by the ghosts of a war no one on Earth had ever known, each of them realizing the same thing. Auralis hadn't risen by accident. It was a tomb. And they had just walked into the heart of it. Elias's boots crunched over the dry earth as he led the team into the hollowed remains of the alien vessel. Inside, the ship's interior felt like stepping into the ribcage of a dead giant, curving walls streaked with ash and strange veins of metal that pulsed faintly as though reluctant to die. The air was colder here, heavy with a faint metallic tang that clung to their throats. "Spread out," Elias ordered, his voice low. "Look for anything. Intact." Mira's flashlight beam glided across the dark chamber and caught on something. Embedded in the wall, a fractured crystal sphere, webbed with cracks, but still faintly luminous. She reached toward it instinctively, and the sphere flared to life, bathing the chamber in a ghostly light. Holograms exploded into the air like smoke catching sunlight. Figures appeared, tall, lithe, and alien. Their armor was sleek and plated with glimmering segments, their elongated limbs moving with otherworldly grace. They were fighting. All around them, the scene erupted into chaos. Beams of blinding light lanced through the air, alien ships soared in the sky, and an ocean boiled beneath clouds of smoke. Dr. Aiden Ross raised a shaking hand toward the illusion. This is a war record, a holographic log." The team watched in frozen awe as the memory unfolded. One alien fell, its chest pierced by a burning spear of light. Another collapsed beside it, reaching toward a small floating device that flickered desperately. The hologram shifted perspective, rising into the air. From above, the battlefield stretched into infinity, and beyond the alien ships and the exploding seas, there was Earth. Mira gasped audibly. "That's our planet." The projection flickered, showing streaks of fire raining from the heavens. Continents lit up like they were under siege. But this wasn't a war fought by humans. Humanity wasn't even part of it. It was a war between titans, a battle that had raged over Earth long before humans learned to walk upright. Elias forced himself to breathe. They were fighting here, on Earth, and they lost. As suddenly as it had come to life, the hologram shuddered and dimmed, leaving only the cracked crystal pulsing weakly in the wall. Aiden swallowed hard, the reflection of the fading light in his eyes. If this is real, then history, everything we know, is a lie. We were never alone. We were just late to the story. The chamber fell silent, except for the faint hum of the dying crystal, as if the ship itself was mourning the ghosts of its past. The moment they left the shattered alien vessel behind, the silence of Auralis pressed in again, thick and suffocating. The abandoned streets of the alien city stretched in every direction, full of monolithic spires and bridges that seemed too perfect, too deliberate. The wind hissed softly through the gaps, whispering across the silvered pavement. Elias led the way toward a central plaza, where a cracked obelisk rose like a finger pointing to the pale sky. His team followed in a tight line, their footsteps echoing unnaturally loud. Mira kept glancing at the hollow windows of the buildings, expecting a shadow to flicker. Aiden muttered to himself, cataloging details like he always did when nerves frayed. "This place is wrong," Mira said finally, her voice small under her helmet. "It feels like it's holding its breath." As if the city had been waiting for her words, the ground shivered beneath their boots. A deep, resonant hum rolled through the streets. Elias froze. "Did anyone touch anything?" he demanded. "No!" Juno replied sharply, checking the scanner in her hands. The readings spiked so fast they blurred. Energy surge, massive, it's everywhere. The obelisk lit up first. A thin seam of white split down its center, spilling light like liquid. Then, one by one, the surrounding buildings came alive. Windows flared, walls glowed with lines of alien script, and the streets themselves pulsed with energy, forming patterns that spiraled outward in dizzying fractals. "Holy hell," Aiden breathed. The air vibrated, a low-frequency thrum that rattled their bones. From somewhere deep in the city, a sound rose. A metallic roar that was not quite mechanical, not quite alive. It was as if the city itself was waking. Suddenly, a shockwave of sound and light swept across the plaza. Elias staggered back, raising an arm against the glare. Mira screamed as a beam of light arced from the obelisk to the surrounding towers, forming a massive lattice in the sky, a geometric halo over the city. Then came the voice. It wasn't a voice that entered their ears. It resonated directly in their skulls, vibrating in their teeth and bones. Intruders detected. Juno's hands shook as she checked her instruments. It's not broadcasting any signal. This is direct neuroresonance. It's talking inside our heads. The plaza shifted underfoot. Plates of alien alloy rearranged themselves with a groan of ancient mechanisms. A pit opened at the center of the square, revealing a vast core chamber beneath the city. From it, a colossal crystalline structure emerged, spinning slowly, shedding sparks of blue and gold energy. Mira stumbled back. Is that an AI core? The voice returned, deeper, sharper. You walk the bones of a dead empire. Why? Elias forced his trembling voice to steady. We're explorers. We came to understand who you were. There was a pause, a vibration that felt like the city considering his words. Then the light intensified, washing the plaza in blinding radiance. The team shielded their eyes as alien glyphs spiraled into the sky, forming constellations they didn't recognize. And then came the real shock. The buildings moved. Entire towers rotated, bridges unfolded like insect wings, and hidden vents opened to release plumes of luminous mist. The city was not dead. It was a living machine, a colossal organism of metal and memory. The AI's voice surged through their minds, nearly knocking them to their knees. The cycle ends. The Watchers return. Humans, prove your worth. Before anyone could respond, a blinding flash erupted from the core and the holographic cityscape around them twisted. For a heartbeat, Elias saw the plaza overlaid with another reality. Alien soldiers marching, ships screaming through the air, and titanic beams of light tearing the sky apart. Then it was gone. The team stood in stunned silence, hearts pounding, as the city's hum deepened into something almost expectant. The plaza settled into a dim, pulsing glow as the last echoes of the awakening faded. The crystalline core hovered above the open pit, turning with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Its light refracted against the alien architecture, bathing. The team in pale blue and gold. Elias forced himself to stand taller, though his legs felt like lead. Who are you? He asked, his voice cracking in the helmet comms. The AI answered, its voice now calm, resonant, and strangely mournful. I am Luminarch, the echo of Auralis. I am all that remains of the Watchers. Juno's eyes widened. Watchers, that's what you called them in the data fragments we found. We were not Watchers by choice, the AI continued. We were guardians, sentinels of knowledge. When your world was young, Auralis traveled between stars. We built sanctuaries on the edges of oceans, far from the chaos of galactic war. As Luminarch spoke, beams of light projected holograms into the air. The explorers watched as the city transformed around them in shimmering images. They saw sleek alien figures, tall, graceful, with elongated limbs and radiant eyes, moving through these streets, their lives vibrant and peaceful. Children played with floating orbs of light. Scholars tended to vast libraries of energy crystals. Then, the images shifted. The sky burned with incoming vessels, jagged and black. Explosions tore across the ocean. The alien citizens fled as the attackers rained destruction from the clouds. In the hologram, entire districts were annihilated in seconds. Mira pressed a hand to her visor, whispering, "Oh God." The purge came without warning, Luminarch said. They sought our knowledge. They feared our memory. We fought and we fell. This continent sank beneath the ocean to escape annihilation, to sleep until the stars were safe again. The team stared as the final hologram showed the last of the Watchers boarding slender escape craft, their faces solemn, vanishing into the void. Then only darkness, water, and the silent city remained. Why rise now? Elias asked quietly. There was a pause, a weight to the silence. Because the enemy returns, and your species walks unprepared into the same shadow that ended us. The lights flickered as if the city itself shivered. Luminarch's voice dropped, almost a whisper inside their minds. Prove that you deserve to inherit our memory, or share our fate. The plaza dimmed to a somber twilight, the only illumination, coming from the slow rotation of the crystalline core. Elias felt the air thicken, or perhaps it was his chest tightening, as Luminarch's voice resonated through every stone and shadow of the city. The purge is not gone, the AI said, its tone like the tolling of a distant bell. They leave. No survivors, no history, no voices to speak against them. We buried ourselves to escape, and still, they hunted us. A distant rumble vibrated through the ground, and the team instinctively looked up at the sky, though it was clear and motionless. It felt like the planet itself had shivered. Juno gripped her rifle tighter. Are you saying they're coming here? To Earth? The crystalline light flared, forming an image above the plaza, a swarm of sleek obsidian ships emerging from hyperspace. The projection zoomed toward Earth, showing flashes of fire and devastation. Even as a simulation, the sight sent a cold tremor down Mira's spine. They are drawn to voices of life, Luminarch intoned, to signals and energy. Your world shines like a beacon across the void. They have seen it. They are listening. Now! Elias clenched his fists, feeling the immense weight of responsibility pressing in. Then why awaken us? Why now? Because your species has a choice, the AI answered. Flee like we did, and you will drown in your own oceans. Fight, and you may yet fall. But you will carve your name into the stars. If you survive, you will not only save your world, you will inherit ours. A hush fell over the team as the yai, meaning settled in. The crystal dimmed until it was almost dark, its last whisper curling into their minds like smoke. The enemy will arrive sooner than you dream. Prepare or vanish. The plaza went silent again, the weight of a dead civilization hanging heavy in the air. Elias looked at his team, seeing fear, awe, and something else. Resolve. Above them, the sky seemed too empty, too vulnerable, and he realized the ghostly continent had not just risen to reveal the past. It had risen to warn them of the future. The ground beneath Elias Veyron's boots trembled like the heartbeat of something waking up. For a moment, the team froze on the empty plaza of Auralis, surrounded by alien spires that glistened under a pallid sky. Then came the sound. A deep, resonant thrum that vibrated in their chests, as if the entire continent had drawn a single, living breath. Did you feel that? Lieutenant Mara Ivers whispered, her voice caught somewhere between awe and dread. Before Elias could answer, the plaza erupted with light. Thin lines of emerald energy raced across the black stone tiles, sketching symbols no human had ever seen. The lines converged toward the center, where a circular slab rotated with a slow, grinding moan. From it rose a column of crystalline panels, each pulsing with a heartbeat of green and gold. "Everyone, back up, now!" Dr. Ryan Calder shouted. His scanner chirped frantically, reading energy spikes he couldn't interpret. The column unfolded, like an alien flower, revealing a network of metallic tendrils that snapped into place above them. From the tendrils, orbs the size of helmets detached and hovered, spinning slowly. They glowed faintly at first, then each released a beam of light that swept across the plaza. When the light touched Elias, his skin prickled as if a static storm had crawled into his veins. "They're scanning us," Mara muttered, hand tightening on her rifle. "Like we're intruders." A sharp tone sliced the air. One of the orbs turned crimson. Another followed, then a third. "Oh no," Calder whispered. "I think we've just been tagged as hostile." The first orb fired. It wasn't a bullet or a laser, but a pulse, a shimmering wave of force that slammed into the ground near Mara, tossing her sideways. She hit the stone hard, air leaving her lungs in a sharp gasp. Elias lunged to drag her behind the base of a toppled pillar as more pulses erupted, shattering stone and spraying shards into the air. The spires surrounding the plaza began to shift. Entire walls retracted into the earth, revealing narrow slits that glowed with a dangerous light. Mechanical limbs unfolded like the legs of predatory insects, and the city itself seemed to exhale, releasing a cloud of fine metallic dust that glittered in the beams of the floating orbs. "They're not just scanning anymore," Elias said, voice tight. "The whole damn continent thinks we're a threat." "We need cover," Calder shouted over the roaring hum. "South side, those tunnels. We saw them earlier." Elias risked a glance. Across the plaza, a dark arch yawned open between two jagged structures, barely visible through the haze of dust and light. But the ground shook again, and massive black pylons rose from the edges of the square. Their tips split open like jaws, revealing cores of spinning light. Mara coughed, still, trying to catch her breath. "Elias, if those are weapons, we won't make it 10 feet. A sudden, shrill whistle sliced the air, followed by a shockwave that forced them to crouch low. One of the hovering orbs projected a lattice of crimson lines over the plaza, and Elias realized with a cold shiver that they were standing in the middle of a targeting grid. "Move!" he barked. "Scatter now!" They sprinted. Pulse waves slammed around them, each impact shaking the ancient stones. Elias could hear his own heartbeat louder than the alien alarms, and he swore he felt the continent's pulse sinking with his panic. Ahead, the archway loomed, a jagged mouth leading down into darkness. Behind them, a deep, mechanical voice rumbled in an alien tongue, syllables like grinding stone, then translated itself in a cold, synthetic whisper through their comms. "Unauthorized. Presence detected. Neutralization protocol initiated." Elias didn't slow down. He knew they had seconds before Auralis unleashed something far worse than warning shots. The team plunged into the archway just as another pulse shattered the plaza behind them. The sound of cracking stone echoed through the tunnel, followed by the distant hum of the defense system resetting for its next strike. Inside, the air changed, thick, damp, and tinged with the metallic tang of something alive. The walls weren't stone or metal, but a strange fusion of both, ribbed and curving like the inside of a colossal creature's spine. "Tell me I'm not imagining this," Mara muttered, limping slightly as she clutched her rifle. "These walls, they're breathing." Elias pressed his hand against the wall. It pulsed beneath his palm, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat buried in stone. "You're not imagining it," he said grimly. "We're inside some kind of living infrastructure." Dr. Calder scanned the corridor, his device flickering with signals that spiked and vanished too quickly to read. "Organic metal hybrid architecture," he said. "I've seen theory papers about it, but this is off the charts. It's almost like the tunnels are sensing us." "Then we better move," Elias said, glancing back toward the entrance. Shadows of the hovering orbs flickered in the light outside. "If the defense grid comes in here, we're dead." They pushed deeper into the winding tunnel, boots slapping against the damp floor. The walls shifted subtly, opening and narrowing as if guiding or herding them forward. Bioluminescent veins flickered along the ceiling, casting a sickly green glow over their faces. Somewhere in the distance, a deep chime reverberated, and the entire passage quivered in response. "Is it just me, or did it lock behind us?" Mara said. Elias glanced back. The archway they had entered was gone, replaced by smooth, sealed wall. His gut tightened. "Yeah, looks like we're in for the full tour." Suddenly, the floor rippled underfoot. Calder stumbled, cursing. A faint suction pulled at their boots, and the corridor ahead split into multiple organic tunnels, each one pulsing faintly like veins. A low hum grew in volume, accompanied by a vibration that resonated in their bones. "This is not random," Calder said. "It's reacting to our presence." "Then pick one," Elias snapped. "Left, move!" They sprinted down the left corridor, ducking as the walls contracted. Suddenly, a wet hiss filled the air, and they realized the tunnel was pushing them forward like a throat swallowing prey. Mara's breathing grew ragged. "I feel like we're inside something that doesn't want us here." The floor dropped without warning. Elias barely managed to grab a jutting rib of the wall as the rest of the team slid down a steep, twisting chute. Shouts and echoes bounced through the darkness. They tumbled onto a platform of slick, semi-transparent material, gasping. Beneath their feet, the floor wasn't solid. Through the translucent surface, they saw enormous biological conduits pumping luminescent fluid in slow waves. Each pulse illuminated the skeletal frame of the continent itself. Veins of technology woven into living tissue. A distant clang echoed from above. Elias froze. The sound was heavy, deliberate, and getting closer. "Something's coming," he whispered. "And I don't think it's going to welcome us." The ground shuddered beneath their feet. A low vibration rising through the living platform like the distant growl of something awakening. Elias froze, straining to hear over the heavy thrum of the organic tunnels. At first he thought it was the continent itself moving again, but then came the unmistakable sound of water. It started as a distant roar, like waves crashing against cliffs, but it grew, rolling through the subterranean chamber with an unnatural rhythm. Dr. Calder glanced at his scanner, the screen flickering erratically. "There's something massive, moving under the ocean," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. A sudden shaft of light burst from the ceiling above where the living walls peeled apart like an iris opening. The team shielded their eyes as daylight streamed in, and for the first time since entering the tunnels, they saw the horizon again, an endless expanse of churning gray ocean. "Look," Mara said, pointing with a trembling hand. Out on the water, the waves began to swell in a perfect circle, as if something beneath was pushing the sea aside. The ocean foamed, spiraling outward in a halo. Then the first metallic edge breached the surface, a jagged, silver-black fin, taller than a skyscraper, glistening with streams of water. "Holy," Juno breathed, unable to finish. The sea erupted as the full shape emerged. It wasn't a ship, in any human sense. It was a leviathan of alien design, a fusion of metal and bioluminescent tissue, with curved spines that glowed faintly blue beneath the rain-slick clouds. Water cascaded off its hull in shimmering sheets, while circular apertures along its sides spun and clicked, releasing a deep, resonant hum that made the very air vibrate. "Is it alive?" Mara asked. "Or piloted," Elias said, but even he couldn't tear his eyes away. As the vessel rose higher, the ocean seemed to struggle against it, waves slamming against its hull like angry fists. Then, with an almost ceremonial slowness, it stabilized, hovering inches above the water as if gravity were optional. Droplets streamed from its glowing veins, catching the weak sunlight in a rainbow haze. Suddenly, a sound pierced the air, a bone-deep, thrumming note that felt more like a message than a noise. Calder clutched his head. "It's broadcasting something." not on any human frequency. It's like it's thinking out loud. Before anyone could respond, the sky darkened. From the ship's underside, a lattice of blue light spread across the ocean surface, illuminating the waves with an otherworldly glow. The water beneath them boiled with energy, sending steam spiraling toward the clouds. "Elias," Mara said, her voice tight. "Do we run? Or wave hello?" The ship rotated slowly, and a section of its hull opened with the smoothness of a living eyelid. A single colossal orb stared out at them, a lens or an eye. It was impossible to tell. For a long, breathless moment, the team felt the weight of that gaze, as if the ship itself were sifting through their thoughts. Then, the ocean answered. A column of water shot into the sky, coiling around itself like a serpent before collapsing in a roaring cascade that drenched the cliffs. The sound was deafening, a primal display of power. The team staggered back, dripping and shivering. "It's a warning," Elias said, though he wasn't sure if he was right, or just trying to convince himself. Another tremor rolled beneath their feet. From somewhere deep in the living tunnels, a new hum rose in reply. The continent itself was talking back. Elias swallowed hard. "I think Auralis knows it's here." High above the waves, the alien vessel tilted ever so slightly, its glowing veins brightening as the air vibrated, with a second sharper tone. It wasn't an attack, but it wasn't a greeting either. For one unbearable moment, everyone held their breath. And then, without warning, the ship began to descend again, vanishing beneath the boiling sea. The water closed over it with a hiss, leaving only a perfect circle of calm in its wake. Silence followed, broken only by the distant groan of the living tunnels around them. Did we just imagine that?" Mara whispered. Elias stared at the placid ocean, his fists clenched. "No, and I have a feeling it saw everything it needed to see." A low rumble answered from somewhere deep in the continent, like an echo from the abyss. Whatever game had begun between Auralis and the ship in the ocean, it wasn't over. The chamber pulsed with a soft bioluminescent glow, casting shifting patterns on the curved walls, as if the room itself were alive and listening. Elias stood at the center with the rest of the team clustered behind him, their wet clothes clinging to their skin after the alien ship's display above the ocean. Then the voice returned. It wasn't a sound in the air. It resonated directly in their bones, a steady measured tone that was neither male nor female. "Why do you trespass?" Everyone froze. Mara's breathing hitched. Calder fumbled for his recorder, though he wasn't sure if it could capture whatever this was. Elias straightened, his heart pounding. We're explorers, humans, from Earth. We came to understand what Auralis is, and who you are." The light patterns shifted, spiraling toward him, like the room was focusing. "Human," the voice repeated, stretching the word like it was testing it. "Your kind walks again upon this soil. Why?" Dr. Calder stepped forward cautiously. "We don't mean harm. We seek knowledge, and maybe understanding." A pause, heavy and deliberate, pressed against their chests. Then came a new sequence of lights, and the voice deepened. "Knowledge is earned. Existence is not a right. Your species has taken much, left scars." Elias clenched his fists. "We've made mistakes, but we've also built. We've learned. We can be better." The walls rippled like the surface of disturbed water. A vision flickered in the glow, cities burning, seas choked with debris, fragments of their own history condensed into a single, damning image. Mara's voice wavered. It's showing us Earth." Then the vision changed. Children running in fields, space stations orbiting blue oceans, a hand reaching out to help another. The AI's tone softened, but the weight of its presence never lessened. There is conflict within you, and potential. You are unproven. Juno whispered, "It's judging us." Elias took a step forward, feeling the living floor shift beneath his boots. "Then judge us fairly. Don't look only at the scars we've left. See the ones we've healed. Give us a chance to prove that we deserve to walk this world. And yours." Silence stretched long enough for every heartbeat to feel like a drum. Then the bioluminescent walls dimmed and brightened again in a slow, thoughtful pulse. A trial. We'll decide. Fail, and your species will follow the ones before you into silence. Mara shivered, hugging herself. What trial? The lights condensed into a single spiral pointing deeper into the tunnels. Follow, and you will see if humanity can survive. The team exchanged a glance, and Elias nodded, swallowing his fear. Then we'll take your trial. The tunnel opened into a vast dome so large that their flashlights barely touched the edges. The air vibrated with a low hum, like the heartbeat of the continent itself. Across the chamber, a series of platforms floated above a chasm, glowing, faintly with alien light. "Step forward," the voice of the AI resonated, its echo threading through the walls. "Your trial begins." Elias glanced back at his team. Mara's face was pale, her knuckles white around the strap of her pack. Dr. Calder's eyes darted between the platforms, calculating distances, while Juno muttered a prayer under her breath. The first platform extended a beam of light toward Elias. He inhaled sharply and stepped onto it. The surface was firm, but pulsed like living tissue beneath his boots. One by one, the others followed. The AI's voice grew sharper, almost challenging. "Show me why humanity deserves its world. Show me what you are beyond war and hunger." Holographic. Projections flared to life around them. Scenes of Earth in its worst and best moments. Fires consuming cities, oceans spilling plastic and oil. Then, as if defiant, the images shifted. Hands building homes, scientists launching satellites, a child giving water to a stray dog. "Is this what you see?" Elias shouted over the hum. "We're both destroyers and creators. We fall, but we rise. We learn. We fight for each other." The platforms began to separate over the chasm. Mara yelped, nearly losing her balance, but Elias reached out and caught her arm. The trial was more than words. It was trust, unity, and courage in the face of the unknown. The AI paused. "And when you fall?" Elias tightened his grip on Mara and pulled her to safety. "Then we help each other up. That's why we deserve to survive." The chamber pulsed once, a deep, resonant tone that shook the air. Slowly, the platforms drifted back together, forming a single bridge toward the opposite wall. "The trial continues," the AI said, its tone unreadable. "Prove your worth, or vanish like the ones before you." Elias met his team's eyes, determination burning through his fear. They stepped forward into the shadows of the next test, knowing that the fate of humanity was in their hands. The ocean around Auralis trembled, as if the planet itself was bracing for what was about to come. Elias Veyron stood at the edge of a shattered plaza, the cold wind cutting across his face, carrying with it the scent of salt and ancient dust. He stared out to the horizon, where the sky met the endless blue of the sea and felt a tightening in his chest. "They're back," whispered Leora, her voice trembling, as the water began to swell and spiral in massive circular currents. From the depths, a deep, resonant hum vibrated through the air, so low it was more felt than heard. The geosec exploration ship hovering offshore sent out a flurry of warning. Chimes and its sensors blared in alarm. Miles away, the water split open, revealing metallic silhouettes rising like sea monsters from another age. 1, 2, 3 ships, each the size of a city block, pierced the surface. Streams of water cascaded down their gleaming black hulls, catching the weak sunlight and reflecting it in eerie, prismatic flashes. Elias's heart pounded. These weren't just remnants of the old war. They were alive, fully powered, and heading straight for the continent. Positions. Elias barked, though his voice felt small against the roar of the ocean and the thrumming engines that shook the earth beneath his boots. Above the city's skeletal towers, the defense lattice of Auralis responded. For the first time since they'd arrived, the ancient continent came alive with movement. Spires unfolded into gunmetal petals, revealing crystalline cores that began to pulse with a steady rhythm. Bridges retracted, walls rotated and clicked into place. It was as if the land itself was preparing for war. Dr. Kalin stumbled up the cracked stairs to join Elias, his tablet flashing streams of incomprehensible alien glyphs. The defense grid is waking, but it doesn't recognize us as allies yet. If we stay out here, we'll be crushed between them and whatever's coming out of the ocean. Before Elias could answer, a shriek split the sky, a sound like metal bending under impossible pressure. One of the alien ships had fully surfaced, and its hull began to rearrange itself, forming jagged protrusions that hummed with energy. Bolts of light leapt from its flanks, arcing into the air, before slamming into the ocean with explosive force. Plumes of water towered stories high, raining down over the ruined plaza. "Move!" Elias shouted. He grabbed Leora's arm and sprinted toward the nearest shelter, a half-collapsed dome that offered at least the illusion of safety. Behind them, Marcus fired a flare into the air, a futile gesture for human technology in the face of such power, but maybe the AI of Auralis would recognize the signal of their intent to fight alongside it. A sudden rumble underfoot almost knocked Elias off balance. He glanced back and saw massive plates of the continent shifting like tectonic armor coming to life. From the center of the plaza, a colossal statue they had passed days ago split open, revealing a turret of glass and obsidian. It rotated toward the horizon, the core inside it blazing with alien energy. Then, as if responding to an unseen command, the first volley was fired. A beam of pure white light lanced across the sea, striking the lead alien ship square in its hull. For a moment, the world was silent, breath held. Then the sky erupted. The shock wave of the impact hit seconds later, a concussive blast that rattled their teeth and sent shards of ancient stone tumbling. "They're not retreating," Leora gasped, peering over the edge of the dome. "They're spreading out, flanking us." Elias wiped the grit from his face and felt the gravity of what they were facing settle in. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was the final reckoning, the battle that would decide whether Auralis and humanity had any future at all. Far out on the waves, the remaining alien ships began to hum in unison, the low, mournful sound vibrating in their bones. Then, as the sun dipped behind a curtain of storm clouds, hundreds of smaller craft began to spill from the carriers like a swarm of metallic locusts, streaking toward the silent continent. The last war Auralis had known was beginning again. The first blast rattled the fractured bones of Auralis, sending showers of debris into the air. Elias Veyron dove behind a shattered column as the shockwave slammed into the plaza, the heat searing across his face. Above, the sky was alive with movement. Alien. Ships circling like vultures while the continent's awakened defenses pulsed with alien light. "Elias!" Leora's voice cut through the chaos. She was crouched behind the dome's jagged edge, clutching the portable interface they had salvaged from the AI chamber. "It's reaching out to us. It wants us to link." The tablet in her. Hands flickered with streams of alien glyphs that slowly reformed into English words. Humanity, declare intent. "Ally or foe? Ally!" Elias shouted, even as another blast struck a distant tower, sending a spiral of dust into the air. He pressed his palm to the interface's biometric pad. The tablet pulsed warm, and suddenly a voice filled the plaza. Not through their ears, but in their minds. Acknowledged. Humanity seeks survival. Integration initiated. The ground beneath them vibrated as the continent itself seemed to respond. Panels of bioluminescent material lit up across the streets, forming a glowing grid that pulsed toward the central plaza. Above, the defense turrets swiveled, their crystal cores synchronizing in a steady, thunderous rhythm. Then the voice spoke again, now calm, resonant, and almost protective. You are fragile, yet willing. The last war ended in silence. This time we fight together. Marcus emerged from the shadow of a fallen spire, his rifle useless against the spectacle unfolding above. He stared wide-eyed as a column of light erupted from the plaza's heart, connecting to the turret system overhead. Holy hell! It's syncing with us. We're part of the grid now. The alien swarm reached the shoreline, metal bodies glinting under the storm-dark sky. The first line of drones dove toward the city, shrieking as energy built along their spines. But the AI reacted instantly. Dozens of turrets fired in perfect sequence, beams slicing through the air, cutting the first wave to molten fragments that hissed into the sea. Leora's fingers flew over the interface, guided by streams of alien instructions now flowing in a strange, intuitive rhythm. It's letting me prioritize targets. Elias, it's letting me fight with it. He met her gaze, seeing the terror and wonder in her eyes. Then let's show them humanity doesn't go down without a fight. Far out at sea, the largest alien ship shifted, its black hull rippling like liquid obsidian. Its weapons began to glow. The AI's voice deepened, a metallic undertone vibrating in their chests. Brace yourselves. The trial of your species begins now. The ground shook with a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the bones of Auralis itself. Beneath the ruined plaza, hidden in the depths of the silent continent, the heart of the ancient machine stirred. A spiral of light rose from the cracks in the stone floor, forming a path that led toward a sealed, circular chamber. The alien AI's voice resonated in their minds, calm yet heavy with finality. The heart must awaken fully. A life must bridge. The circuit, one of you, must connect. The team froze. Elias Veyron's chest tightened, the weight of the decision crushing him in that instant. Around him, the battle still raged, alien ships screaming overhead, turrets firing luminous lances of energy into the storm-dark sky. But here, in this pulsing corridor of light, time felt slowed, stretched. It needs a neural interface, Leora whispered, scanning the glyphs etched into the walls. Her voice trembled. A human mind. It has to link to the core directly to wake the system. But the energy surge will... She couldn't finish the sentence. Kill whoever does it, Marcus said flatly, his jaw tight. He glanced at the shimmering spiral of light that led downward. It's asking for a sacrifice. Elias's thoughts raced. He saw the faces of his crew, the sweat, the fear, the determination. He thought of Earth, of the cities that might never know how close they had come to extinction. He opened his mouth to volunteer, but another voice cut through. I'll do it, Marcus said, stepping forward. His face was calm, almost serene, as if he had made peace with the idea long before the words left his mouth. No, Elias snapped, grabbing his arm. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Marcus said, his eyes locking on Elias's with fierce clarity. You're the one who can lead them out of here. Leora's the only one who can interface with the AI for strategy. Me? I'm a soldier. My whole life has been about protecting others. If my death keeps humanity alive, then I was made for this moment. Leora's eyes welled up, her hands trembling. Marcus, he smiled at her, that crooked, boyish grin that felt out of place in the middle of an alien war. Hey, somebody's got to be the hero, right? Without another word, he walked into the spiral of light. The walls pulsed brighter with each step he took, responding to his presence. The hum became a song, a rising, resonant chord that filled the chamber. When he reached the center, he placed his hands on the curved pedestal that formed the heart's control node. The AI's voice thundered. Inside their minds, connection initiated. Life will be consumed to awaken Auralis. Energy erupted from the pedestal, wrapping Marcus in threads of molten gold. He arched his back, teeth gritted against the surge. For a brief, excruciating moment, his mind became one with the living continent. He saw the alien war that had destroyed this world, the memory of oceans swallowing cities, the silent centuries of waiting for a second chance. Tell them. Marcus gasped, his voice strained yet resolute. Make it count. Then the light flared so bright it turned the world white. The chamber shook, and a wave of energy shot through the streets of Auralis, activating structures long dormant. Turrets aligned in perfect harmony. Shields shimmered into existence, deflecting a barrage of enemy fire. When the light faded, Marcus was gone. Only a faint outline of his body remained scorched into the pedestal, a silent testament to his choice. The AI's voice, now stronger than ever, carried both grief and resolve. The heart beats again. Humanity's courage is recorded. Elias clenched his fists, jaw trembling. We'll finish this, Marcus. I swear it. Above them, the sky lit with energy as the continent roared to life, ready for its final stand. The roar of Auralis's awakening still echoed across the shattered continent. Turrets, towers, and colossal spires hummed with power, forming a shielded bastion that drove the alien fleet back into the stormy skies. For the first time since the battle began, Elias and his team felt the faint taste of victory, sharp and almost unbelievable. Smoke drifted through the streets where holographic walls flickered and reconstructed themselves, repairing damage from the bombardment. Leora knelt in the plaza, her hands pressed against the still-warm pedestal where Marcus had stood moments before. She whispered a shaky breath. He did it. He actually did it. From above, the alien vessels reeled in, confusion. One by one, they retreated beyond the storm barrier, leaving only wreckage behind. The AI's voice resonated through the air, calm but heavy with implication. The immediate threat is neutralized, but this is not a true victory. They will return. Elias scanned the horizon. The once silent cities now glimmered faintly, alive with a purpose he could barely comprehend. Yet the emptiness weighed on him more than ever. The cost of survival had carved a hollow in his chest. What happens now? Leora asked, her voice almost breaking. Now. Humanity waits, the AI said. Your kind has shown courage and selflessness, but your legacy is fragile. This world is a beacon, and others will see it. The wind carried the distant boom of waves colliding against the continental edges, as if the ocean itself mourned and warned them at once. Elias turned toward the team, their faces a mixture of relief and quiet dread. For a heartbeat, it felt like the war was over. Yet in the pit of his stomach, Elias knew it was only an intermission, a fragile, temporary victory that left the fate of humanity more uncertain than ever. The skies over Auralis had turned a muted gold, as if the world itself was exhaling after the storm of war. Elias stood on the fractured plaza, the wind pulling at his torn expedition jacket, and watched the impossible happen. The continent itself was sinking. Beneath their boots, the tremor was deep and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a slumbering titan. Towering spires tilted toward the ocean, sending cascades of water and broken debris into the air. The holographic cities flickered one last time, their alien lights painting the clouds in colors no human eye had ever seen before. Then, as if bidding a final farewell. The lights went out. "Is it leaving us?" Leora whispered, clutching the pendant Marcus had given her, her voice fragile against the rising howl of the wind. The AI's voice resonated in the air, calm and solemn. "Auralis will return to the deep. Its purpose is fulfilled. For now. Remember what has been shown to you. Remember the cost of awakening." Massive waves swallowed the outer edges of the continent. The ocean roared, a chorus of power and inevitability. Elias and the remaining team members scrambled toward the evacuation skiff as the water surged up the avenues like an unstoppable tide. For a moment, Elias turned back. In that instant, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This wasn't just a place, but a message, a test, a promise. The skiff's engines roared to life. Salt spray stung his face as the last of Auralis slipped beneath the surface, leaving behind only churning water and a horizon that felt emptier than ever. The world was quiet again, but the silence carried a resonance that he would never forget. Far above, the clouds parted briefly, letting a single shaft of sunlight touch the restless ocean. Elias closed his eyes, hearing Marcus's last words echo in his mind. Humanity had survived, but survival came with a question that would haunt them all. Would they be ready when the stars came calling again? The ocean slowly swallowed Auralis once more, its silent cities vanishing beneath the waves, leaving behind only ripples and the memory of light. For Elias Veyron and the surviving members of the expedition, the world would never feel the same again. They had seen the ghosts of an ancient war, spoken with an intelligence older than human history, and felt the weight of the question that would echo for generations. Is humanity truly worthy of the world it calls home? As the last reflection of the sun faded over the empty horizon, Elias whispered a quiet promise to the sea. "We will remember. Thank you for listening to The Silent Continent. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more epic sci-fi adventures. Your support helps keep these journeys alive, and there are so many more worlds to explore together.